Star Wars collectors, and welcome to another Bossk's Bounty video, and welcome to episode 266 of Ask Boss Bounty. This is the weekly Q&A series that drops every Sunday, where I take your questions from the comments and do my best to answer them. So if you do have a question for next week's episode and you want to be featured in the video, be sure to leave your question in the comments section of this video. And as I said, hopefully your question will be picked next week. If you happen to enjoy the video, hit the like button down below, subscribe if you are new. And with all that being said, I do have a couple of things to go through before we get on to the first question. And of course, the first thing is we only have 1 week left of the giveaway. If you are not already aware, I will be giving away this awesome Anakin Skywalker 3-pack, and to enter, all you need to do is sign up to Whatnot using the link in the description below and the pinned comment. When you sign up, you will automatically be credited with £10 or $15, depending on where you are, to spend on Whatnot. When you make your first purchase using that credit, you will also be automatically entered into another giveaway for this, which is, sorry about the glare there, which is a graded UKG 95 Republic Trooper from the Old Republic, which is awesome. If you're not sure what Whatnot is, it is an online app, trading app basically, where you can buy all sorts of amazing collectibles from Vintage Collection Black Series, Star Wars Lego, Funko Pops, collector cards. There's people doing live streams on there, which is a lot of fun, which you can join in and perhaps win some giveaways as well. I do have a bunch of things listed of my own, which if you're in the UK, you can use your credit against, which means you can often get a Vintage Collection figure for pretty much the cost of shipping. Maybe slightly more depending on which figure it is, but go check that out. We only have 1 week left for the giveaway. Be sure to leave your Whatnot username in the comments of this video as well. As I say, we've got 1 week left, and the winners of those 2 items will be announced on next week's Ask Boss Bounties. So good luck everybody with that giveaway. I've also got a couple of thank yous to mention, and the first one is to Toby Kelting. He left a super thanks on my top 5 Star Wars Vintage Collection figures of 2025 so far video, and he said, congratulations for reaching 10 million views so far, Tim. I don't know much about YouTube, but I think that's a great milestone that shouldn't be unmentioned. Lots of love. All the best to you and the family as always, Toby. So thank you so much, Toby, for the super thanks there. That is greatly appreciated, super generous, so thank you so much. And that is correct, yes, I did manage to hit 10 million views maybe 3 weeks ago, something like that. And I've also been on YouTube for 8 years in May. Wow, that is a long time. Lots of videos, over 1,000 videos I think it is now. So thank you, Toby, really appreciate it. And of course, thank you to everybody that watches my videos, hits the like button, supports the channel, all that kind of thing. The next thank you I have to mention is for a guy called Jeff. He is super generous, really big supporter of the channel, and he sent me in the post this absolutely amazing piece of art. This is a artist that he found on Instagram, I believe, and this is of course the vintage Bossk on that green background. Really amazing painting there, or print if you like, and I can't show it all in one shot, but you get the idea. Super generous, so thank you so much. And he sent me some other posters as well from the same artist that he wants me to do in a future giveaway, which I will absolutely do for you guys. So at some point in the future, those will be coming up on the channel. And as you've probably noticed, this is episode 266 of Ask Boss Bounty, so I just want to really quickly talk about VC66, because it was one of those mini cards that they put into that SDCC Death Star set. Here is mine. It's been graded, and yeah, they re-released it, kind of. New version of the figure, but they did call it VC66A. So a lot of people don't like the fact that they numbered that one, and I can completely understand. And of course, you know, the mouse droid is VC67, which was the other mini card that came in that set. So I just wanted to sort of give a bit of a shout out to those, because they are a little bit of history of the vintage collection. Kind of messed up the numbering for everybody, but you know, what are you going to do? All right then, with all that being said, let's get on to the first question, and it's from Eduardo Sanchez, and he says, when the Cantina was rumoured as a HasLab, I thought Akmina might have a shot at getting made as one of the bonus tiers. I was a little bummed but not surprised that she wasn't included. I don't see any way she gets made in the main line. She'd have to be an exclusive of some sort. Do you think there's any chance she could still happen via Pulse exclusive or multi-pack? Well, I definitely feel that if she does have a chance, then it will have to be, as you say, outside of the main line. A little bit maybe like the Life Day Chewie that we have here. That was a bit of a surprise for everyone. It doesn't have a VC number. I think it was a Shop Disney exclusive, I want to say, at the time. So it doesn't have a VC number, but it is definitely, you know, part of the Vintage Collection, if you like. They have used the Chewie mold that we have already in the line and just put a sort of red cloak on him, and I think they resculpted the hands so he can hold that little orb thing that he has there. So that's probably the only way that we'll ever get Akmina. I've got to admit, it's not really something that I've really thought too much about because it's not a figure that's too high up on my list. But I know a lot of people out there for nostalgia purposes would like that one in TVC. But I feel, you know, as I said, if it was ever to be done, it would have to be something similar to how they've done Chewie. And maybe there's some figures out there that they could potentially, you know, use parts from. But because I really don't think we'll get an all-new sculpt for Akmina. Reckless Deck says, hi Tim, love the positive and upbeat take on the state of TVC in 2025. And I think you're 100% correct. Question, do you think we'll see deluxe versions of Baylan and Shin with cloaks? And what about the white Ahsoka Peridia figure? I snapped up the original Ahsoka right away. And then they released the deluxe version with the cloak and the owl. I decided to hold off on Ahsoka from Peridia and wait for a deluxe because I really wanted that one with a cloak. So far that decision has kind of burned me. What's your prediction about those three? So I'm not too sure about the Ahsoka, but I feel that at some point in the future, maybe in the next 12 months, we may end up seeing Baylan and Shin with the cloaks. They've done exactly the same with the Black Series, and I don't necessarily feel that they have to be deluxe figures either. In the Black Series, they are standard priced figures and they've just got a cloak, and I think they may have even corrected the height issue of either Baylan or Shin, whichever one was incorrect. And as you can see there, I've got my Baylan there. I've got him with a cloak, and that's kind of what you can imagine it would look like. That cloak that I've used there actually belonged to Luke Skywalker from the Light Cruiser, Mandalorian Luke Skywalker there, and it fits okay, I guess. I feel it needs to be a bit more black coloured because I don't think it's completely black. It's more of like a very, very dark brown in my opinion. But yes, I can absolutely see them doing it at some point because obviously they're not going to be wasting, you know, the all-new sculpts of Shin Hati and Baylan Skoll that we have there. I'm pretty sure we'll see them with cloaks. How they accomplish that, how they get those out, maybe it'll be a 2-pack or something. I'm not really too sure, but I think they'll do it. They'll follow on with what they've done with the Black Series. George Aiken says, question for next week. Are Hasbro pursuing an online model only for Vintage Collection in the UK? I ask because the last couple of waves seem to have not been available in stores. Well, buddy, I think that's been the case for quite a long time. If you're talking about the big stores like Smith's and things like that, they haven't carried Vintage Collection for a pretty long time now, basically. And it's only sort of your online stores and maybe your sort of small comic shops and things like that which will have Vintage Collection. Having said that, HMV were carrying it and I haven't visited one of them for a while, so maybe they've stopped now. Basically, maybe they weren't selling as well as they should in store and maybe they've stopped. But as I say, I'm not 100% sure because I haven't been in that shop. But in terms of like Smith's, the big toy store, they finished quite a while ago. Richard White says, question for next week. With the new Vader TIE, do you think they will release a variety of TIE fighters? The one from Andor would be amazing, as would an Interceptor. Now, unfortunately, I've taken a look at the new Darth Vader TIE Fighter versus the TIE Avenger from Andor, and I don't feel that they can, use that sort of center part of the ship to bring out the TIE Avenger. They're too different. So I don't feel that just because we've got the Darth Vader's TIE Fighter that we'll be getting any other TIE Fighters. I don't think they can use any parts from it. I may be wrong, but just looking from some images of the two, I don't think it's really possible. So I don't feel just because we've got the Vader's TIE that we're going to get all these other ones. And I know a lot of people out there may have preferred that Avenger from Andor. It's a new ship rather than something that we've had a few times in the past. But for me personally, the Darth Vader TIE Fighter was something that I've wanted in the Vintage Collection for a long time, so I'm very happy. But that doesn't mean to say that I don't want that TIE Avenger as well. Of course I do, man. I would absolutely love that. But I don't think the Vader TIE necessarily helps with the others, if that makes sense. Happy Chewy says, question for next week. Dear Tim, now that Hasbro re-released a previous HasLab item for $100 US less, with less details, the Ghostbusters Proton Pack? Could it open the door for a more simple version of previous TVC HasLab items? Personally, I don't think so, because I don't really see how you could sort of dumb down the Razor Crest or dumb down the Barge, or even the Ghost for that matter. They don't really have lights, they don't really have sounds, so I'm not really too sure what you can take away from those and make them any good, really. I just don't see it happening. They're still going to be the same size, same postage costs, all that kind of thing. And I'm not really too sure either what they've actually done to that Ghostbusters Proton Pack. Is it the same mold and what have you, then they've just like reduced the amount of sounds or lights that it has? I really haven't looked into it too much because it's not really something that I'm interested in. But for me, it looks like something that's a little bit different basically, and not sort of HasLab quality, obviously because it's $100 less. But as I said, I don't really feel that that model fits with the Vintage Collection. I don't really see what you can do to the Ghost, for example, to make it cheaper. Frank Mahia says, great videos always, Tim. You give us information about the Vintage Collection that no other channels give us, such as re-releases about figures and variants, so thank you. Question for next week: if Hasbro decides to finally make Hoth Han Solo, should it be the original blue jacket Kenner version or the correct brown jacket, with or without the hood up? Well, I've got two versions in front of you there. The carded version there has the hood down with like a removable hat, and then the one in front of you that's loose has that sort of head with the hood up, if you like. And I don't really see why there's any reason why they can't do both with one figure. A little bit like they've done with the Princess Leia figure, where you get that attached sort of hood piece that goes down on her back, and then you can remove that piece and then put the hood around her head. I think they can accomplish something similar with the Han Solo. So this separate piece here around his neck there, you could remove that and then do a simple head swap. I don't really see any reason why they can't do that. And in terms of the colour of the jacket, is it brown, is it blue? Obviously the Kenner figure was blue. I think this one in here looks a little bit more brown, and this one looks a little bit more blue. Again, why not release both of them as like some kind of, I don't know, variant or exclusive or something? I don't know. Have a bit of fun with it, basically. Aquilish Doug says, I can get behind reissues that are in high demand, like the Gamorrean Guard, or have context like forthcoming or recently issued playset like Bomb Vindom, but not if they are easy to acquire, like Bib Fortuna, which is totally fair enough. He says, question for next week: how do you feel about reissuing figures previously exclusive to vehicles or playsets on a unique card? They've done it with the Clatoonian Raider, and they could have done Fat Bib instead of Thin Bib. Many of us would love Merrick with a close-up of his kamikaze course, or 8D8 even on a Book of Boba Fett card. Yeah, for me, I don't really have a problem with that, really. You know, Merrick was the one, wasn't it? A lot of people wanted that Merrick figure. Saying that, if you want that Merrick figure loose, then you kind of want his ship as well. So maybe the carded collectors were a bit annoyed, obviously, that they just wanted that card back. And then if you were to re-release it not on that card back and on a different one, will that even make them happy? Because they'd still want the other one, if you know what I mean, because they're sort of trying to collect them all. But as a way of getting a figure sort of reissued, I'm always for a new card back anyway, regardless of whether it's been in you know, a playset or a vehicle. E-Wing Squadron says, some people go to church on Sundays. I prefer tuning into Bossk's Bounty. Thanks, buddy. He says, I've always thought of Star Wars, Jurassic Park and Mission Impossible as my personal trifecta of favourite films, with the latter having its latest and possibly final release in theatres. I can't help be a little sad that Mission Impossible never had a proper 3.75 inch action figure line. Jurassic Park has the brilliant Hammond collection, and of course Star Wars practically invented the market. The only way for me to get an Ethan Hunt figure with a CIA computer terminal playset is for me to 3D print or customize it, which I'm strongly considering. Question for next week: which favourite movie of yours is missing its 3.75 inch action figure counterpart, and what figure and playset or vehicle would you want most from it? Your channel and content are top notch, and I truly believe that it's people like you who keep Star Wars collecting and enjoyment alive. Thanks again, buddy. So, I mean, I've thought of two here, and they're a bit left field, I feel. The first one, maybe not so, and that's Rambo. I absolutely loved the film Rambo First Blood, or just First Blood as it was called. And then, of course, Rambo 2, which was another awesome film as well. And I would love a 3.75 inch action figure line based on that. Now, we did kind of have 3.75 inch Rambo figures, but they were based on like the cartoon. They were kind of like G.I. Joe style figures, like O-ring type figures. And I would prefer, you know, something like this, but Rambo, which would be flipping awesome. The other one for me is a film called The Wild Geese. If you haven't seen it, then you should watch it. And yeah, that's just one of my favourite films of all time. And I would love just the squadron of like Roger Moore and people like that with their cherry berries as action figures. That'd be sweet. Riley Bob says, hey Bossk, happy to hear health and happiness are back in full effect. Question for next week. With Hasbro struggling to juggle the Black Series of Vintage Collection Retro, etc., as well as holding the master license, at least in the US, I think, would you think it would be a good idea or in the best interest of 3.75 to open up the license and allow other companies to make some or collaborate? Joy Toys 3.75 inch line is rather impressive, and the playsets vehicles they make for their Acid Rain line are nice added additions. Would it be something you would mix and match, or would that be something that wouldn't interest you in the slightest? Your thoughts. Have a great week. Cheers. So in the main, I've got nothing against that happening, so long as a few things happen, and that is that the price doesn't go up, the quality doesn't go down. You know, the reason for doing it is that we're going to get a, you know, better range of characters, more new tooling, because that's the only reason I can think of that we'd actually want that to sort of happen. Because essentially, you know, when companies like sublet licenses out, they're going to want their cut as well. So Hasbro are going to want a small cut, and then obviously the new company are going to want to make money. So my issue with it is that I could see, you know, prices going up essentially, and that's probably not a good thing. So if all of those things that I've mentioned sort of stayed the same, then I have no problem with it. But often when these sorts of things happen, then, you know, they often get subletted to sort of smaller companies with smaller budgets, and prices tend to go up. Scott Layton says, question for next week. It's great that they've reverted to the 6x9 cards for all deluxe figures going forward. However, we've still got the shadow of the past 7x9s. Do you think they'll go back and redo Cobb Vanth, IG-12, Sabine, Hammerhead and the Imperial Armoured Commando in a future fan channel wave as a small production run in 6x9? Well, never say never, but, you know, in like Sabine's case, for example, are people going to be happy to sort of pay a deluxe price again, like for the third time, just to get another card back? I'm not really too sure about that. I could really see them doing this one, because this is the one obviously that we all had the complaints about. Original 96 card should have been on a normal standard card. Everyone kind of knows that. And that's the one that I could see them doing that with. The others, maybe the Imperial Armoured Commando, maybe without some of his extra, you know, items, but then is he deluxe? So this is my issue about the whole sort of deluxe card thing. I think they've missed the point a little bit. Ideally, we do still want deluxe figures with loads of accessories like E-web cannons and moisture evaporators and massif dogs, all that kind of stuff. And they're not going to fit on a 6x9 card. You know, you don't want them cramming stuff into a bubble just to sort of jack the price up. Ideally, those boxes that we had for like the massif and things like that, then they sort of work quite well. We just don't really want numbered sort of deluxe card backs, do we? That's the issue. Isaac Smith says, what are your thoughts on doing carded 4-packs for different clone legions? A good example is maybe getting a Phase 1 Rex with Fives, Echo and Jesse. I'm all for that, buddy. I'm all for as many clones as they want to give us, however they want to do that, whether it be special action figure sets where it's 3 loose figures like they did with those ARC Troopers not so long ago, or doing like, you know, 3 or 4 carded 4-packs. I'd be very, very happy with all of those. Sean's Andy says, glad you're on the mend. Question for next week. Star Wars has always been filled with crazy aliens and droids. Why haven't we gotten more aliens and droids in TVC? With the release of the Cantina, which I sadly miss out on, you would think more aliens would be released to fill it. When it comes with new releases like Obi-Wan or The Mandalorian, we have to get the Droid Factory figures to build out our universe. I think a Droid 3-pack should be in the works for an upgraded 21B and EV99 at least. Thanks for all you do. May the Force be with you. So what the problem here is really is that we have limited slots every year, and you know, Hasbro have to sort of get the main characters out there, and main characters in the main are played by human beings, right? So, you know, Baylan, Shin, Luke, Han. You do obviously have sort of main characters that are droids like K2SO and R5D4 and R2D2, and we get those. It's all of the sort of secondary characters like background aliens, background droids that we're kind of missing, right? But there just isn't enough sort of slots for them to do those, unfortunately. And you know, this is the sort of thing that we're sort of talking about. If you're going to do a HasLab, you need to support it, and you know, supporting it with a reissue of Bomb Vimdim, which some people might need, isn't as good as giving us one of the aliens that we've never got before. So that's just the issue, my friend. Logan Production says, hey Bossk, another great set of videos. Question for next week. Do you foresee Hasbro doing re-releases or anything to celebrate the Force Unleashed anniversary in a couple of years? Not something crazy like all the Starkiller outfits, but maybe in his silver and black adventure robes from the Death Star mission, which was one I was shocked we didn't get 20 years ago. Maybe a Kota Militia 4-pack. Well, as we know, Hasbro don't really have a great sort of history when it comes to celebrating anniversaries in the vintage collection. So, you know, something as small as the Force Unleashed, when you compare it to, you know, the Empire Strikes Back and Revenge of the Sith and things like that, it seems unlikely, doesn't it, that you'll get sort of anything substantial from that game. But, you know, as I say, with all of these things, never say never, because, you know, they have surprised us in the past with, you know, the Joruus figure, for example. No one expected that, and there you go, they did it. So never say never, buddy, but it's one of them, innit? It's just a bit unlikely. Swamp says, hi boss, question about the Ghost Anakin had me wondering, do you think they could do a carded 3-pack of the Force Ghosts? The Anakin would most likely use new tooling because we already have a decent Yoda and brand new Ben Kenobi. So yeah, I mean, you know, talking about those Force Ghosts, we're getting that new Obi-Wan Kenobi, right? Or Ben Kenobi from A New Hope. So, you know, they could pretty much reuse that one, couldn't they? And if you look at the Black Series, didn't they have that 3-pack of cardbacks? I think they did as well. It wasn't just like a sort of 3-pack of loose figures. I think they actually did cardbacks for all of those Ghosts, if I'm not mistaken. I'll have to double check on that. But you could definitely get a set of Black Series figures with all 3 Ghosts, right? And that's something that I could eventually see Hasbro wanting to do for the vintage collection. It seems quite a natural thing for them to do. As you say, we've already got Yoda. We've now got that new Obi-Wan. It'd be an easy reuse for that Obi-Wan. And looking at that picture of Anakin, Yoda, and Ben Kenobi standing there, does Anakin's outfit differ that much from Ben Kenobi's? Could they just reuse it? I don't know. Let me know in the comment section below if they could just reuse that, because if they could, then they've pretty much got it all already, haven't they, that they could do that. Captain Troutman says, hi boss, question for next week. As a first time commenter, long time channel viewer, with Andor's introduction of some fairly unique small vehicles, i.e. the Imperial Troop Transport we see in Season 2, the Imperial Hovercraft we see in Season 1, the Hovercart Cassian and Luthen used to escape on Ferrix, plus the dozens of smaller speeders and the like we see characters using throughout the show. What would be your thoughts on Hasbro maybe doing some non-HasLab boxed vehicles like they did with the Imperial Transport for the Mandalorian or the Assault Tank for Rogue One? Also, what vehicles would you absolutely love to add to your collection? I think it would really bring some much needed vigour back to the line to see more vehicles as centerpieces for individual display scenes like we got the Bantha and Luke Speeder. Keep up the great work and always enjoy watching your videos. So they did literally just release a vehicle that I really want, which is the Darth Vader's TIE Fighter. I wouldn't really class that maybe as a small vehicle, so I do understand what you're talking about here, and absolutely, of course, I feel there is sort of room for a small vehicle sort of subline within the vintage collection, and some of the ones that you've mentioned there are definitely ones that I would like. You know, even going back to like Cobb Vanth's Speeder and the Mando Speeder. You've got speeders from Rebels for Ezra, people like that. There's quite a lot of things that we still need for that size, if you like. Some of those that we're talking about maybe getting on the sort of larger side, like the Imperial Troop Transport from Andor Season 2, that might be a bit big. But certainly that hovercraft one with the gun on the back from Season 1, that's definitely something that I would love in the vintage collection. And equally from the Phantom Menace as well, that little green speeder from the Theed Palace. You know, there is quite a lot of things out there that we need, so there is definitely room for that. You know, we've had a couple of speeder bikes and stuff, but nothing really sort of substantial in that sort of small vehicle size. So hopefully Hasbro address that in the future. And as I say, one of those ones that we desperately need is the Mando Speeder. And then they could redo Anakin Speeder as well, couldn't they, from Attack of the Clones? I'm using the very old one for my Anakin figure, so that's another one. All right then guys, that's it for this week's episode. I want to say a big thank you to everybody for watching, and don't forget to enter the giveaway. We've got 1 week left. Details are in the description and in the pinned comment. Thank you all for watching. Thanks to my Patreon supporters and channel members as always, and a big thank you once again to Toby and Jeff for the generosity. Thanks for watching everybody, and we shall see you on the next one.